And here's another vlogging test with the Canon M50. I wasn't satisfied with the manual settings that I had on the camera. I think that I have maybe a bit more to learn about the manual settings before I use them on this cam. So I have it on the camera icon at the moment. I also have it on a very short handle, shorty handle, so this is just at arm's length. It's quite difficult to stabilize this camera when I have it on a shorty handle like this. Switching hands, see if that's any better. Yeah, I can still see the camera bouncing around some, but hopefully the image stabilization is taking care of some of that. It does have an image stabilization on this camera, both in the lens and in the camera. I have them both enabled now. That's why it is quite cropped onto me, even though I'm using an 11 to 22 millimeter lens. I noticed yesterday that there was quite a lot of blowout, quite a lot of light coming off my face and just blowing the image out. It was quite overexposed. I had it on all manual settings. Clearly my manual settings weren't able to cope with the major contrast between the dark and the light. So now I'm using on the camera icon, and the camera is doing some of those functions automatically. Now I'm walking away from the light. Generally the tar behind me over here will be very blown out this time of day. Is that the case? There's no circular polarizing lens on this Canon M50 at the moment. It's just the camera on its own, so it's not going to deal with that too well. If I go into full manual settings, I can change the f-stop and dial out some of that glare by changing the aperture, but I'm not doing that at the moment. So here I go across to the other side of the road, and now there's quite a bit more light on my face. The sensor should be dealing really well now. Hoping that it's not blowing out, because it's on not an auto white balance. I've set the balance to sunlight, so it should easily be able to deal with the amount of light at the moment. But some of the other settings, the aperture, etc., are being handled automatically by the camera at the moment. So hopefully this gives me quite a good result. I was a little bit disappointed with my full manual settings on this. I've only had this camera a short while, so I haven't had a chance to play around with it too much. At the moment I'm still preferring my Canon SX60. My manual settings on there are a bit more straightforward, and I'm able to use them to a better degree than I am on this camera. I don't know why, this being a Canon, I don't know why the controls are quite so different to both my Canon SX710 and my Canon SX60. At the moment I'm just trying to get this camera stabilized. I'll have to do another test with a monopod just now and see if that makes a bit of a difference with stabilization, but at the moment this is bouncing quite a bit. I'm really hoping that the camera sorts a lot of that out. So this 11 to 22 mm lens I had really hoped would be a bit wider, give me more real estate, kind of a bit more like towards a GoPro but without the distortion, but it's not really doing that. But that's because I have it on stabilization, so that will crop the image, and it will crop it twice in effect here, because I have both the stabilization in the lens and the stabilization in the camera. But yeah, this round of testing is really going to determine whether I keep this camera or not. This camera is almost out the door, because I'm so used to, and I so like my Canon SX60, as well as my Canon SX710s. I did a round of testing before this boat trip now, and I'm convinced all over again. If I could just put a CPL lens onto the SX710, I'd be really convinced. But I paid a lot of money for this camera, even though I bought it second hand, etc. It still cost me a lot of money. This was by far and away my biggest expense of all my vlogging rigs, and I'm in the darkness now. See how that copes. This was by far and away the most expensive camera I have, and I really was hoping it would do a slightly better job than it has so far. Maybe I can still get it to do that. Maybe the problem is with me and not with the camera. That's quite likely.